that our natural fed deer venison is having high levels of lead. So
Let's use capital words.
so anyway, we're fortunate to have Dr. Fogarty.
I'm going to just kind of start talking while she gets stuff going here. I got a lot of information to download to you guys. I'm part of the ad hoc Bobby Kennedy team that has got a number of us who are speakers as a part of it, which is it's been a great, wonderful grassroots coming together through the World Mercury Project. I'm president of the International Hyperbaric Medical Foundation. And which is a small group of internationally renowned physicians and scientists and engineers that are working towards getting more advocacy for using what I like to call it the turbocharger of mitochondria, or in a different elevator pitch. These things are anti-inflammatory chambers. In England, there's a wonderful physician named Philip James who started 50 clinics for MS that are all based on just the use of hyperbaric oxygen therapy to downregulate the inflammatory processes of multiple sclerosis. And so in that socialized healthcare system, they have saved lots of money by implementing hyperbaric oxygen therapy in an industrial fashion. In Israel, there's a large center that has been well funded by a patron called the Segal Center, where Dr. Shaya Fradi is a classically trained, I believe, nephrologist who went into hyperbaric medicine, and they have 40 person chambers, 4 of them. They can treat 160 people at once, and they are treating dementia, they are treating other brain injuries, just doing a lot of great stuff there and putting out a lot of good research. And here in the States, my research partner, Dr. Paul Harch, who's at LSU in New Orleans, and has been the director of the Hyperbaric Medicine Fellowship there. Is it somehow not working? You try the PDF. There's a PDF version. Dr. Harch has pioneered, going back 25 years, the treatment of significant severe brain injuries. One of Dr. Harch's first cases was a boxer with dementia pugilistica, and was one of the more important ones in my interaction with him and in starting to do research with him. Starting 10 years ago was a case of a child who was brain injured, 17-year-old severely brain injured child who was in a car accident. His name is Kurt Allen, and you guys can all go to hbot.com or it's even on YouTube. And well, so none of that's working. Go to, why don't you just do a search on Newsweek and Eden Carlson Fogarty. Yeah, Eden, as in the Garden of Eden. Yeah. So Dr. Harch has pioneered brain injury recovery through hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And in one of his really most amazing cases, he took a 17-year-old kid who failed all rehabilitation services in Southeast Louisiana, and the child was basically a vegetable. I mean, chronically vegetative state. And in 90 hours of treatment, Dr. Harch was able to bring this child back to a walking, talking human being, who now actually holds a job in New Orleans at Home Depot and owns a home. Can I just, yeah, okay. It's not running on the other side here.
He goes to sleep.
Darn, my slides are really had a lot more here, but so Dr. Harge and I this summer published a case report of this young child, Eden Carlson, and it was breaking news nationally for what really is the truth of the matter. This is the first case report in the history of medicine to show 20% brain regrowth by any cause. And so you'll see this beautiful child is she's the forerunner of a whole bunch of children who are anoxic brain injury children who have drowned. And just this summer, there's probably 24 now around the country who are being treated by Dr. Harge and or member clinics of the International Hyperbaric Medical Association. By the grace of God, really, we just stumbled across this revelation of how to bring a baby back from a semi-vegetative state. If any of you have time, USA Today has a nice little piece on it, and Eden's experience. My part of the work is to be a photojournalist for Dr. Harge's work, and we have MRI evidence of 20% increase in this child's brain volume after she went into her fully vegetative state and was released from Arkansas Children's Hospital with this being given to the parents as, here's your child, here's your feeding tube, this is how this works. And that documentation is so important from what we're dealing with vaccine injury as well. My talk, I was going to focus on a lot of science and show you a whole bunch of images about how we can, through the advocacy of radiology, which we are kind of the attorneys as well as photojournalists of medicine, how we can start to translate and bring about the documentation of vaccine injury, which needs to be coming through from our ER docs. And it really parallels the repetitive acute encephalopathies of concussion. Again, can't go through all the slides and the science that I had behind it, but the big picture is that in translating injury patterns of the brain from acute concussion, which is what the TxMFA is working on with one of our board members in Chicago, who's Daphne Denham, she's treating acute concussion in high school athletes, hockey players, football players. She puts these children and young athletes in a hyperbaric chamber for just a single hour, and their photophobia is gone. And some of them are ready to take tests the next day. And when you really start to look at where this hyperbaric oxygen therapy can go, I mean, it's the breath of life that we all share. It's what is our main nutrient? Is it really glucose, or is it really oxygen? And there's a whole cascade of stuff that Dr. Mikovits was showing, the NRF2 pathway, that is really pushed very hard by hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And glutathione system is also upregulated with hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And when you really look at our biological machinery, if you have a deficit of oxygen in an area of swelling, whether that's in the brain or in your ankle, and you need just a brute force push of a molecular oxygen gradient into those cells that are on idle, they can take that oxygen, that's their electron source, it's their our electricity that we run on is running as a carrier molecule from oxygen. So we're getting, just through basic thermodynamic laws, a pressure effect on oxygen into these cells that are idling and regenerating all of the cellular energetics and mechanisms. From an economic standpoint, the way I like to conceptualize hyperbaric oxygen therapy is kind of the way we all kind of conceptualize the Federal Reserve and leverage money, but hyperbaric oxygen is like a big cash infusion or resource to your body that then can go forth and use your own cellular energetics to create more work output from your cells. So Eden Carlson, her parents fought every day against a vaccine paradigm being forced on them while she was in this state. There were really 4 miracles in this little girl's life. And it's every parent's worst nightmare. I mean, the sacredness of the home and you have something happen to your child, but Eden's mom was in the shower. She has some older children. Eden, being the youngest by far, somehow found her way out into the swimming pool and was found down by mom about 15 minutes afterwards. And from a medical standpoint, this child went 90 minutes without a heartbeat and 15 amps of epinephrine, and basically she was not supposed to live through the transport to the hospital. She was not then supposed to live through the metabolic crisis of every organ for the next 3 days, and she did. A couple miracles there. And then as her parents kept seeking, and they're very religious people, and they didn't take God's word from the medical profession. They went out and sought out ideas of how can we rectify this situation, and found Dr. Harch. Now, this is one of the more serendipitous things. Dr. Harch actually prescribed nasal cannula oxygen in the home, because this family's from Northwest Arkansas. I couldn't, it's expensive to do hyperbaric medicine. Couldn't just kind of say, okay, we're going to trust you that this is going to work. So through the serendipity of resource management and godliness acting in this situation, Dr. Harch thought, well, we've used bridging nasal cannula oxygen to kind of keep some kidneys going a little longer before dialysis. So that's what he did. So Eden's parents had just 1 hour, gave Eden 1 hour a day of nasal cannula oxygen. And in the first hour, Eden's mom, Crystal, saw that she started to kind of crack a little smile. And then as they did that for about 2 weeks, actually 3 weeks, they saw very, very graded gains in her awareness, and her body just kind of was less stiff. She had these storming reactions that you can see in some of this video. So as an efficacy test, the genius of this intervention into pediatric anoxic brain injury is that it can be done in the home. And then once you've kind of shown that it's working, it's doing something, and all you are is dissolving. All of us right now, we're breathing 20% oxygen. If I put a nasal cannula oxygen tube on your nose, your plasma is going to go from 20% to closer to 95% oxygen carrying capacity, and that's the little bit of oxygen that kind of perked up her young brain. Once you've defined that can work in these young kids, and then he brought her in, and there's a number of people who understand that my group, the TxMFA, has been working on getting hyperbaric oxygen therapy out for our soldiers who are brain injured, but once you understand that Dr. Harsh then brought her to New Orleans and then did 1.3 atmospheres of room air. And that is mild hyperbarics. That's what some of these football players are doing in their own soft chambers. That's also the placebo dose that has been used to really confound the research in the DoD and the VA for hyperbaric medicine for our soldiers. So I kind of call it placebo gate based on Del Bigtree's discussion of placebo gate for vaccines, where we have biologically active placebo adjuvants being used to not show a difference in toxicity. Well, here the federal government and a lot of our taxpayer dollars, really close to tens of millions of dollars, have been used to study hyperbaric oxygen therapy with this placebo that is biologically active. And then you have this recurrent theme in this research where we're comparing a biologically active placebo to something that's also biologically active and maybe a little bit different way and different intensity, and you don't show enough difference to say, oh, it works. And sadly, this goes all the way back to a study done in Canada on cerebral palsy kids called the Colette study. It was published in the Lancet in 2001. And the on-the-ground researchers and one of our presenters at HBOT 2017, Pierre Mauroy, they found huge gains in cerebral palsy kids at both the treatment dose of 1.75 atmospheres, 100% oxygen, and 1.3 atmospheres of room air. They were equivalent efficacious treatments that were causing gains in their gross motor achievements through a 3-month period of time that would have taken a year through traditional physical rehabilitation. So, long story short, this is totally not even what I had prepared for. I mean, this is just off the fly. But long story short is that in environmental medicine, which is what we're dealing with here, I mean, this is the microenvironment. We need to look at every technique that we can. We need to look at every little part of how we can help these children. And paradigms are being shifted. This Eden Carlson, I'm still in shock. I went to medical school and was told that the brain doesn't heal itself, the brain does not recover itself, and you can't regrow brain tissue. And my research partner and good friend down at LSU did it. And I'm so grateful for this community, to this community, and we're going to be working on with the Mehans, hopefully, and a couple other people here in the crowd, and a concept of ethical vaxxonomics, which will be the gateway. I know it sounds like an oxymoron. Ethical vaxxonomics will be the gateway, the idea of a gateway idea to get those who are still not quite ready to go where most of us are. It will get them over to our side of the street. And it's just this simple act of medical defiance of sorts, of saying, hey, come see these physicians who are going to vaccinate you in the way that they feel duty bound to do under the Hippocratic Oath. And my part of it is, we're going to titer check you. We're going to prove that you need a booster. We're going to do these things, and I know it sounds like it is a Schindler's List kind of idea here. But we have to get the middle. We have to get the people in the middle to come across and understand, hey, I'm going to help you dodge a few bullets here, because you don't understand that you're in a firing line.
Thank you. Because I am a lobbyist in Austin fighting for medical freedoms, a real problem nationwide is standard of care. In Texas, according to the Commonwealth Aiming Higher study, we're 41st in the nation. 44th with prevention and treatment, and 51st, because they added Washington, D.C., for affordability and access. Well, when you have an aggressive Texas medical board like we do, that with doctors dare to go outside the standard of care, they can be cited by the medical board for not following standard of care. Well, we will never improve anything if we don't get past the standard of care that has failed us.
I've done a number of things in my medical career that include bringing things forward above standard of care, molecular breast imaging, the use of medical grade honey in Iraqi burn victims, and I even have a little enema technique that I've published that can stop a GI bleed in the blink of an eye. But what is standard of care means that's the lowest common denominator. When you're practicing an art of medicine above all the rest of the lowest common denominators, that's advanced care, that's not standard of care.
And we even have to be careful with the term above, because we have rules that the doctors cannot present themselves to be superior. So the word we've kind of come up with is beyond standard of care for better. So thank you so much.
All right, guys, changing over quick.